Last night, Joe Biden had his first town hall as president, and a number of topics came up, some of which we might return to on tomorrow's show. But first, we wanted to talk about student loan debt and loan cancellation, which Biden has been in favor of, although not to the level that many activists want. Here he is talking about that at last night's town hall.
Loans are crushing my family, friends, and fellow Americans.
Me too.
The American dream is to succeed, but how can we fulfill that dream when debt is many people's only option for a degree? We need student loan forgiveness beyond the potential $10,000 your administration has proposed. We need at least a $50,000 minimum. What will you do to make that happen?
I will not make that happen. It depends on whether or not you go to a private university or a public university. It depends on the idea that I say to a community, I'm going to forgive the debt, the billions of dollars of debt for people who have gone to Harvard and Yale and Penn and schools. My children, I went to a great school, I went to a state school. But is that going to be forgiven rather than use that money to provide for early education for young children who come from disadvantaged circumstances? That we should be eliminating interest on the debts that are accumulated, number one. And number two, I'm prepared to write off the $10,000 debt, but not 50.
Mr. President, let me ask you.
Because I don't think I have the authority to do it by sign of the pen.
Okay, so I mean, look, JR, he was at least honest. He said, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna make it happen. And there's more there. I'm gonna give you first.
Yeah, I'm a little confused at because this is what when I read it, I was like, I need to see how he said this, because the way that it was written was that he's not willing to do $50,000 of student debt to eliminate, but he's willing to jump on board for 10 because he doesn't think he can do 50 from the stroke of a pen by signing an executive order, whatever process he may go through. Does that mean he can do it for 10? Because that's what it seems like he's saying. I'm not sure if that's what he means.
That's what it seems like.
So again, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm not I don't know every aspect of the way that all these orders would work. But is there a limit? So at 10,000 you can, because is that written somewhere? But if it gets $10,000 and $1,
Constitution,
then that means you can't do it by the stroke of your pen.
Well, I mean, he has to be talking about executive orders because anything could be done through legislation. So he seems to think there's something I can do, but not so much. I'm trying to play devil's advocate. What could he possibly be talking about? And I'm coming up blank. Now, maybe I'm just ignorant or dumb. I don't know. That's possible. It's happened before. Or he just doesn't want to do it, and this seems like a convenient out. That I can't do that by the stroke of a pen. No, you have every bit as much authority. The authority is vague and has been used broadly in other areas for bad stuff, sure. But if you're saying you're gonna do this, but there's some dollar amount, okay, well, then what is it? Is 10,000 the most that you falsely think you have the legal authority to do as president? Or could we get 11,000? Maybe 14,000? Do I get thrown in jail if I say 17,000? What exactly is the cutoff point? Because there is a wide range between 10 and 50. And in that range, I would say dwell millions of Americans whose hopes and dreams are being crushed under this debt. So maybe it's worth us thinking a little bit about and seeing how much help we can actually provide. Because Chuck Schumer even seems to think you can do way more than 10,000, let alone education activists, people who are trying to get this cleared. So why do you think that? And by the way, he cannot just adjudicate this on town halls responding to a question. If this is his defense, then he needs to provide actual evidence, or he needs to be corrected. And if he can't be corrected, then he needs to be attacked by other Democrats, pointing out that he is lying when he says 10,000 is the cap. It isn't, and it matters. 15,000 would help a lot more, 25 far more than that. I've had student loan debt. I'm thankfully free of it now, but there are millions and millions of Americans who desperately need this aid. And him sort of just cavalierly saying, nah, that's as much as I think I can do, is just not acceptable when there's so much at stake.
Yeah, so this is also the way certain kinds of Democratic politicians feel comfortable with Republicans still having this level of power that's close enough to holding it. They can blame them for the reasons that they agree with them. I'm not gonna do that. I can do 10,000, so I can still sound like I'm all actually for some kind of student debt relief. But I can't do 50 because we got to send that to Congress. And we know what's gonna happen in Congress, or at least in the Senate for sure. They're gonna be against it. So I tried, you guys. I tried. Now, if there's too much of a Democratic control over these branches of government, then they have to do something, or they have to be honest, openly honest, completely, and say, yeah, you know what, we can do it, and we can even do it through Congress. But I just don't want to. It would have to get to that point, and if you get to that point, you just look bad. So we're like, we need to keep some semblance of a Republican Party here, and not completely decimate them, so that we can lean on them as being the bad guys when they are.
Yeah.
But we are actually agree with them on these bad decisions. That's what they still need them for. That's why Nancy Pelosi said she wants a strong GOP. A strong GOP means just strong enough that we can leave them there, that when we agree with them, which is a nice percentage at the time, it can be just their fault when they're all bad.
JR, we just got a comment, and I'm not gonna name the person. I love when people give us feedback, and it says in all caps, give them a break. It's a pandemic and a recession. No. And you know what? I'm not going to, specifically because it's a pandemic and a recession, which I've looked into. It affects people other than Joe Biden, and affects them in a way that being crushed under tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt is actually worse for them. He's the president, he's gonna be okay. He's wealthy, he's gonna be just fine. But people who've been suffering in this terrible economy, that are being crushed by a BMW worth of student loan debt, they need help. And his ability to sign an executive order isn't, as far as I can tell, affected in any way by a pandemic. In fact, I would say it's a great justification to do it, rushing aid to people who need it most. But I want to ask you a question, JR, because he referenced in there, it depends what school you went to. We don't want to be canceling debt for people who went to Harvard. What do I care where someone got their education?
Again, you know what that is?
What does that matter?
That's making it seem like you're the everyday guy. And all the rich and elitists went to Harvard because that's the thought process and the illustration we have in our head of the type of folks who go to Harvard. I've never been to Harvard. I went to USC, which I think probably has a similar feel, because there's a lot of rich kids that go there. And there's a lot of kids, by the way, that aren't rich that went to USC that actually got by because there's this is a prestigious school. There's a way that I can get ahead. I will accumulate this debt in order to get ahead because that's what's basically been promised to me. If I get this education, I'm in. What do I have to worry about? Yeah, 90, 80, 90, $100,000 worth of student debt. Who cares? I'm gonna be making millions. You know what school I went to? I went to Harvard. So there's not just all these rich kids. Yes, there's plenty, and they'll pay their own way, whatever they wanted to do with Harvard or any of these other schools, Stanford, all of them. But there's plenty of kids that go there who were told, you go here, you're now on the level of what we always called the Harvard and Stanford and USC and all those kids. And it's not always the case. In fact, most times it's not.
Yeah, what if it's a kid who grew up poor and did really well in his tests, got a scholarship or whatever to go to Harvard? No, screw you, because you went to Harvard? That doesn't make any sense. Honestly, fake populism is way worse than no populism, because it produces things like this. Things like Tucker Carlson occasionally using the word ruling elites. But it doesn't mean anything. It's being used as a defense for the same old policies that benefit the rich. Or even in this case, where what we're talking about is setting up new aid. If fake populism is being used to limit that aid as much as possible, I would rather that you just be honest about the fact that you are largely in favor of the financial gains going to the wealthiest people, because you're trying to make sure that less of it goes to those who actually need it. Anyway, this hasn't been done yet. He could have done the 10,000 on day one. He hasn't even done that. So we're having this debate about numbers, but as of right now, the number's 0. He has done 0. Now, yes, they've stopped the interest and all of that. That's good. It's a pandemic after all, but it's still waiting for people later on. And as of right now, his position is indistinguishable from Donald Trump's position on canceling student loan debt from the point of view of someone who's actually being crushed by it.
And by the way, if he has an agreement with folks that think that there's some kind of a detriment on the economy, if you relieve this student debt, tell us that. If that's your belief, and then we can actually have a conversation about the realities of those situations, the economic discussions, what it'll actually do for people, what it'll do for the economy if they have that kind of money that maybe they were paying every month to student loan debt, or weren't paying every month to student loan debt, and going further and further into debt. And we're like, how come no one can buy any houses? Man, people's debt, they don't actually care about these things, but people are concerned this is what happens to their lives from the beginning.
Yeah,
it changes a lot.
And by the way, if what you're actually worried about is the possibility that a rich couple's kids will get aid, that already factors into the federal student loans that they're offered anyway. That's how it works. If your family has a lot of resources, you're not gonna be offered as much loans. That's already built into the system. Using it as a justification not help out people now is either ignorant or purposefully dishonest. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.